Hey friends, my name is Catherine and today we're going to be making a 3-layer explosion box. An explosion box is a box that looks like a cube when it's all folded up, with a cube box with a lid on the top. But when you take the lid off, the sides fall out and it opens up into this multi-layered memory box, basically. So we're going to be making that today. I have decided that I want it to be an actual cube for at least the outer dimensions. So I'm going to do the base of the box 3 inches by 3 inches, and I'm going to do the sides 3 inches high. To achieve that, the easiest way we're going to do is just take and put it on our scoreboard real quick. You could also do this with a pen and a ruler, but I'm just going to do it on my scoreboard, and actually I'm going to do it on my non-printed side of my paper. And I'm going to put a score at 3 inches, 6 inches, and 9 inches. All right, with me so far? Then we're going to turn it so that these scores are the opposite direction of the scores on the board, and we're going to do the same thing over again and put a score at 3 inches, 6 inches, and 9 inches. All right, so this particular piece of paper is a 12 by 12 piece of paper, so I actually ended up with a grid that is 3 inches by 3 inches squares, 4 along and 4 high, but I really only need it to be 3 along and 3 high. So I'm going to go ahead and take off the excess. I can do it with my scissors, or I can do it with a slide cutter, and I think I want to use the slide cutter. I find I get a little bit more accurate cut if I use the slide cutter on this. But you can totally just do it with the scissors. You've already got the score marks made. There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to. But there we go, and then that's a 1 by 4 of 3 by 3 squares, and we'll set that aside and then take and turn it and do the same thing for the other one, just cutting off one of the groups. So now I've got 1 by 3 of a 3 by 3 inch squares, and this gives me 3 by 3, or if you prefer to look at it that way, 9 by 9. I'm going to line it back up, make sure that everything's worked out. Yes, it has. Perfect. Okay. Now for the angle part. Still with this piece of paper, although I'm going to cast that aside for a second. I'm going to grab my angler. This just does 45-degree angles, which happens to be perfect for this project. So I'm going to grab my angle. I'm going to line it up right here so that the paper is sitting at a 45-degree angle. And I am going to run a score down on a 45-degree angle on each of the corner squares so that it divides it half that way and half that way for each of them, so that it has an inner triangle and an outer triangle, because we're going to trim off the outer triangle and keep just the inner triangle on there. This will be important for making sure that it folds up flat. If we don't do this, it's going to end up with weird sticking up parts. That'll mean that the box doesn't close. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, let's, instead of cutting those off, let's cut those off. I was going to say let's fold them in, but I've decided I don't like them. So we're just going to cut them off. And this way, it gives us fun triangle-y scraps that we can use for something else. So we'll toss those scraps aside and cut off the rest of these. Here we are. Okay. And this is going to give us the outer layer of our box and the base of our box shape. Because what we can do is take and fold along our creases There we go. And fold along the creases the other way too, so that all of our creases are folded inward. And then what we can do is take and line up, so along this angled edge that we cut, if we line up those two corners, it'll crease inward. We can go ahead and just fold that. So now we've got a crease that lines up those two edges, and we're going to do that all the way around. So fold it inward, line up our two edges, make sure it creases all the way to the base, and then put a crease right there. Same thing there. And I know that this is getting a little bent so you can't see, but I'm creasing that right there. And then the last one, do the same thing. Match up those two folds and put a crease right down there. And that is going to be our outer box. But we want it to have many layers. That it'll fold up like this, so it'll look like a box when it's all folded up. But like I said, we want it to have many layers. And we want the inner layers to be slightly shorter than the outer layers. Now that we've got this outer layer all folded up, let's grab another piece of paper. We'll set this aside for just a moment. And we'll grab another piece of paper in a complementary color. I'm thinking pink. And this one, we're going to do it 3 by 3, except the starting piece and the ending piece are going to be 1/4 of an inch less. So 3 minus 1/4 of an inch, and then 3 inches from that mark, so 6 minus 1/4 of an inch, and then 3 inches from that mark minus 1/4 of an inch, which is 9 minus 1/2 an inch. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and take and actually cut this end piece off before I do the opposite direction. That way I don't have to cut it off afterward. And we'll take and toss that bit of paper aside. And then take and, again, turn it so that the lines are the opposite direction of our score, and then do the same thing. 3 minus 1/4 of an inch, 6 minus 1/4 of an inch, and 9 minus 1/2 an inch, which, since this is printer size paper and is 8.5 inches, works out perfectly. Now what we're going to do with this one is cut out entirely each of those edge pieces. So we're going to take and line our scissors up. And I am going to do this with scissors rather than the slide cutter, because the slide cutter is great if you're doing a cut all the way down. But if you're doing only part of the way down a piece of paper, it's not as useful. Oop. Almost cut that where I didn't want to. That's all right. It ends up all right. And then the next one, just line it up and cut it out, and then line it up and cut it out, and then line it up and cut it out, and then last one, line it up and cut it out. There we go. Okay, so now we've got this plus shaped bit of paper that is 3 by 3 here, and 3 by 2 3/4, 3 by 2 3/4, 3 by 2 3/4, and 3 by 2 3/4. So we're going to take and fold each of these in, same way that we did toward the center with the first one, except we don't have to worry about those outer flaps. And then we're going to just drop that down in the middle there for now. Then we're going to do the same thing with another complementary colored paper. I think I want to do blue for this one, but we're going to make this one even shorter. So instead of 1/4 of an inch shorter, we're going to do 1/2 an inch shorter. So 3 minus 1/2 inch, so 2.5. And then 3 inches from there, so 6 minus 1/2 inch. And then 3 minus 1/2 inch from there, or 2.5 inches, which is actually 8 inches. And then trim our end off like we did before. And even though the other one ended up the perfect size for that width of paper, this one won't, because we're making it smaller. But it's still good to trim it off ahead of time. So then we've turned it so that it's the previous creases that we made are going the opposite direction as our crease board. And we're going to do the same thing. 2.5, 5.5, and 8. And then we're going to trim off that little piece. And then do the exact same thing that we did before, only this time the pieces that we end up with are just a little bit smaller. Okay, cut out those corners again. Corner cutting. Go, see if I can line it up properly. Sometimes trying to make sure things line up doesn't always work the way that I want it to. Alright, last corner. Alright, and there we have it. Same thing as before, fold the outer flaps toward the center. And drop it down the middle. So then we end up with this different levels of petals, basically. That's what it looks like, to me anyway. So what we're going to do from this point is take a bit of glue. I've got this dauber full of clear liquid glue, and we will... I wonder if there's a seal on the inside. Oh, there is. Haha. See? Wouldn't have gotten any glue out if I hadn't taken that off. But there we go. We've got this dauber of clear glue, and we're going to pull that out and just daub down some clear glue on the back of the pink paper. And then set the glue aside for a moment and make sure that it would also work with glue stick. This, or even regular glue, like Eileen's tacky glue, would work perfectly for this as well. And then just make sure that we've got it lined up. I just happen to have these clear glue daubers. Just make sure that we have it lined up really well with the center, with the outer one, and stick it on. And then the same thing for the blue one. On the outside, just smear on some glue. And then we're going to put the lid on this glue stick because we're not going to use it for a moment. And then take and drop it into the center. And smooth it on really well. And then we'll be done with this part for a moment. Now we're going to need to make the outer lid. The outer lid is going to be pretty easy to make, I think. It's just going to be a box in its own right that has a base that is 3 by 3 so that it holds this closed in the 3 by 3 size. So we'll toss that aside for a moment and grab over a bit of purple paper and decide how deep we want our sides to go. I think 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to do double 3/4 of an inch, which is 1.5 inches, and put a score down. And then do 3 inches over from that, which is 4.5 inches, and put a score down. and then do 1.5 inches over from that, which is 6 inches, and put a score down. And then same thing as we did with the previous ones, we're just going to cut off this extra bit of paper because we don't need it. There we go, toss that aside for a moment. And then turn this so that the scores are the opposite direction as the scoreboard, and do the exact same thing over again. 1.5 inches, 4.5 inches, and 6 inches. There we go. And then, again, cut off the excess. And once we've done that, we're actually going to go back through and do a second set of scores. But we want to cut the excess away first. That way we're not scoring up our scrap paper too much and we can save it for something else. Okay, now we're going to put a score halfway in on the edge pieces. So at a 3/4 inch there, and at 5 1/4 inch on that side, and then turn it and do the same thing, 3/4 inch and 5 1/4. Okay, now we're going somewhere. So what we're going to end up doing with this is cutting down toward the center on the inner. So we've got 3/4 inch and 3/4 inch, and then cut on this line toward the center, but stopping at the score mark that indicates the center 3 inches. And then same thing on the opposite side. So 3/4 inch, 3/4 inch, cut on this line, stop at the line that is the center. And then turn it and then do the same thing for the opposite sides. So once I've cut this, I'll be able to show you how they bend. Okay, so this, now we've got these tab bits on either side, but they're not cut off this way. Then what we're going to do is take and fold the short inner tabs towards each other in half. And then fold that towards the center. Come on, you. Don't be weird like that. Is that extra long? It ends up just a little bit long there. That's okay. That just means that the fold is a little weird. That's all right. Just trim it off and it'll work. Okay. Then what we're going to do is take and fold these side pieces towards the center as well. Towards the center. And then fold them this way, towards the center. So those should just touch each other, because it should be 1.5 inches and 1.5 inches, which is 3 inches. There's a reason for that. You shall see why. All right, everything folded in. Now, lift back open these tabs, these cutout ones right here, and lay that there and that there, so that they just meet. Like making friends. Hello, I'm one side of the paper, I'm the other side of the paper. Nice to meet you. Then we grab our glue dauber back out again, and we can put a line of glue just on the inside of those tabby bits. And then remember that we left our clips over at the sewing machine, and stand up and go and grab them, because we're gonna want our clips for this. I just like these little binder clips. They're really good for all these kinds of situations. Then we take and we fold those tabs that we put glue on back to the center. Fold that taily bit that we'd folded inside and then folded back out, and now we're folding back in again, back over those clips so that, or those tabs, so that the glue is touching the inner part of that and then clip it down. And do the same thing for the opposite side, and it'll make a box lid. So the inner parts of those longish tabs, and then fold up that tab, tuck those in, and try and not get just glue everywhere, which, if you guys have seen any of my paper crafting videos, is just impossible. It's just the most likely thing that I'm going to get glue just all over the place. Come on, you, and fold it, I mean it, fold it in like you mean it. And then, if we've done it right, we should end up with a box that only has folds on the outer edges and not any raw paper edges, which makes it look more finished and more professional. And then we just wipe off that bit of extra glue that we got everywhere, because we got glue everywhere. And those clips will come off as soon as the glue dries, and it'll hold everything in place, hopefully. We'll see how that goes. And then this is dry-ish, so we'll take those clips off and see if we can't just push this box together and put our lid on. Maybe, hopefully, sort of, kind of. And there you have it. An explosion box. You might want to make your lid a little bit bigger. I might end up redoing this lid. But an explosion box. So that you've got a cube on the outside with a lid. It just looks like a regular box, but when you open it up, it opens outward, and you've got different layers and different stories and different places to put pictures and memory keeping and everything like that. So this is what I did today. I'd be interested in hearing what you're doing today. If you have any ideas of things that you want to see me try, I would love to hear them. This was a suggestion, and I am always open to other suggestions too. So if you've got any thoughts, let me know. And I will see you guys all later. Bye! Oh yes, and remember to subscribe. Bye!